Good morning. It's Saturday. I'm in the office. You know what that means. The Saturday Morning Hustle podcast. And I have a question for you. I'm going to start a conversation with this question. Do people really know you? How much of your story, your history, your personality do most people in your life actually know? How much detail and information about you do you share with other people? Well, here is your chance. Here is your opportunity to tell the world more about you through the discussion we're going to start on this podcast and hopefully your responses on social media. Let's have a conversation about things people probably don't know or understand about us as people. More than just our job titles, more than just our education levels, community activities, common interest, etc. What about you that most people probably don't know? Maybe they've forgotten or haven't experienced it with you, or just aren't connected with you enough to understand at the depth necessary. Let's talk about that today here on the Saturday Morning Hustle podcast. And I do intend for you listening, for anyone listening, to respond, to reply, to add your 2 cents to be part of the conversation on social media or on the podcast platform you're listening to this conversation. I'm going to tell you some of the things about myself people don't know. We're going to talk about situations, whether it's family, casual friends, people who follow you on social media, industry contacts, coworkers, etc., and how these groups of people often only know part of the story. We're going to explain that concept. I'm going to use examples in my own life and prompt you to do the same, to respond again on social media or the podcast platform, or send me an email or any way you want to do it in order to let people have a little bit more insight into who you are. Let's use the social aspects of social media to give people details that they may not have about you as a person, things that really are important to you that you don't get to communicate on a regular basis, either because you have such a casual conversation with someone. And again, these are people who maybe follow you on social media who actually have never met you, or coworkers or people that you work with generally, maybe in your industry. Maybe you see them at functions related to work, etc. And so they don't know the depth of who you are as a person, or the exact opposite. People who should know you the best, your family, but because you're an adult, you don't live with them, you don't speak to them every single day, you don't get to share the nuances of your life, your career, your activities, your goals, they don't know you as well as you would like either. And if that's the case, and I think we all do have family members who don't understand enough about us, I also want to prompt you, after listening to this podcast, to reach out to those people in your life, those people who you don't live with and you don't have a conversation with on a regular basis, but they're family, they're deep connections. They're some of the people maybe you've known the longest in life, friends and other acquaintances that you've had for a very, very long time. Reach out, engage them, tell them you were thinking about this idea. You were thinking about the fact that they don't know or understand who you are, your motivation, etc., as much as you would like, and then explain it to them. Go into that detail with them. Hopefully they'll share with you as well. This is a catalyst for you to do that, to share with other people, to go a little bit deeper. I'll start with the first example, the one closest to home, right? Our family. Our family are the people that we have known the longest and have the most connection to us, and ultimately want the best for us. They're always there to help us find the best version of ourselves, and they're unconditional in their love. They're there through thick and thin. That's what family is and what family is all about. But I can tell you in my own personal experience, my parents, who I don't live with and haven't lived with now for over 35 years, right? So as an adult, I don't live with my parents. They have an idea of what I do for a living, and basic idea, and they have an idea of the things that I do in my personal time with my wife and with the people that are my adult friends. but they don't know the details. They probably knew about me when I was a child and when I lived under their roof, whether it was with my parents or with my sister, etc. Great example of this is neither one of my parents can really tell you what it is I do for a living. And in fact, I think my mother knows about this podcast because my niece and nephews have mentioned it because they are teenagers, and so they're very active on social media and digital formats and all the smart devices that they're connected to on a regular basis. They're all aware of this podcast, and I've shouted them out before here on this podcast. My lovely young people that I appreciate so much. So, but I don't think my dad even knows I have a podcast. I also don't think he really knows what podcasts are, and he's not anything he's interested in, which is perfectly fine. So it's not a bad thing. Neither of my parents probably understand my real job. They'll tell you maybe that I own my own business. They probably will tell you that I work in marketing because that's been a job title of mine when I worked for other people. It might tell you that it's advertising or public relations because those are my degrees from college, but they truly don't know what I do on a regular basis because I don't get an opportunity to explain it to them in depth on a regular basis. We don't live together. We don't see each other very often. When we do, a lot more conversations about things that are more pertinent, everyone's health, things that we're doing that should be enjoyable, things that are related to the family, things, those common connections again, etc. So it's not unusual for the people closest to you in your life, your family members, to not know all the details because you don't get to communicate with them on a regular basis. And as much as we all like being friends and on a adult relationship with our parents, now that we're adults and not children and parent relationship, but peers, adult to adult relationships, you still don't get to have too much of a conversation about a lot of adult things, your work, your activities in life, things of that nature. My parents have a really good idea of some of the fun things I do in life. I like to go to college football games. They know I'm a big supporter of the University of Oklahoma. They know I like the Thunder basketball team. They also are aware that I'm a soccer fan, and they probably assumed I watched some World Cup games recently, but we haven't had a conversation about it. They definitely don't know any of the players or teams I was pulling for outside of the United States. It's not a bad thing. It's just something that, if you think about it, is an opportunity for you to communicate better, to dig deeper, to create better relationships with people. In this case, specifically, the people who are most important to you in life because they're your family. Now, the opposite end of the spectrum, there are a lot of people who will tell you maybe they know me from social media. They follow on Twitter, Instagram, etc. Or people that I know casually from business, from being in the business community here in Oklahoma City, being an entrepreneur and being part of groups that are entrepreneurial, business development, etc. Some of these people that we know casually, know by name, know by appearance, some people that I have had working relationships with or have collaborations with that have deeper connections. Maybe some people have been on my business podcast that I've interviewed them, or I've interviewed them on the Oklahoma Venture Forum podcast, which I also host, etc. So these are opportunities to connect to people, to relate to people, but we still know each other in a casual way. Most of them, again, would probably only relate to me in a business sense, the type of business I do, the type of things I talk about on this podcast and my business podcast. Same thing, the information I share on social media about business advice and activities, some of the casual fun stuff I was talking about earlier, sports and entertainment, etc. Even where I eat lunch on occasion, because those are the kind of things we share on social media. But I'm also someone who, even though I've been in the business world and the marketing world since around 2000, which puts it around 22 years, 23 years at this point, I spent 15 years before that in the music industry. I recently discussed that on this podcast, talking about my tinnitus and other injuries and fatigue that came to me through working in the music industry for a long time. And a lot of interaction I had on social media after that podcast episode about mental and physical health and things in my life that were connected to my time in the music industry. And a lot of people who I knew casually, knew business and socially, who didn't know I had that in my background, that didn't know I had that history, which created an opportunity for me to discuss such things and talk about such things and expand upon my history, and then asking those people to expand on their history and see if we had more common ground, more commonality, or more uniqueness And if you continue to look at people for the things that you have in common, but also the things that are unique about individuals, the more depth you can understand about other people, the more commonality you can find, the more interesting they could be to you, and vice versa, the more interesting you can be to other people if you will share things in your background, in your history, in your interest, anything that really makes you tick or is a part of who you are. If you can share those things, then people can find you interesting. They can find commonality. They can find connection. We can do a better job of communicating with each other. And ultimately, I think that's how the world gets to be in a better place. A lot of people would complain right now about the state of communication, the state of how people treat each other, definitely the state of social media. There's a lot of just terribleness and ugliness and negativity happening on social media. That's not the point. That's not the cause. That's not the reason social media was invented and become popular, but it does continue to happen. The only way we can counteract that is to reach out to people, to share more with people, to find common experiences, to find commonality, to find and express and share things that are interesting about us and learn more about things that are interesting to other people. That's why I'm asking you, as you listen to this podcast, to share more about yourself, things that people probably don't understand or know about you. Maybe it's because you find it to be a trivial thing, but it's something that makes sense as to who you are. Maybe it's something in your history or past. If someone's known you for 2 years, obviously your history before that, they wouldn't be aware of. If someone's known you your whole life, but they didn't engage in certain activities with you, they're not aware of that as well. And then there's that gap. Again, your family, your parents, the people that are most connected to you should know the most about you in your life. But because we don't live with them as adults, we don't get to share with them the same experiences that maybe we share with our adult peers, people that we interact with on a regular basis, which is probably more likely coworkers and people in your business sphere of influence. Those people only know you from business. They need to know more about you as a human being, interests you have, things that you find value in, your morals, your ethics, your values, the things that you think are positive in the world and that you would like to share and express with them in an exchange of connection and communication and collaboration. The only way that other people will open themselves up to us is if we open ourselves up to them. And this is your opportunity to do just that. So, number one, I want you to respond and reply and share things about you that people probably don't know on social media. You can connect directly to me. You can respond to the post about this podcast, or you can make a post about this podcast, tag me or use the hashtag Saturday Morning Hustle. And tell people a surprising fact about you, something that's interesting, something that they probably didn't know. Much like recently when I shared my time in the music industry, when I talked about mountain biking and an accident I had. If you didn't catch that episode, go back to the second episode of 2023 and see that information that I shared with the world about things that happened to me 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago. 40 years ago, even, that people who've known me for 2, 5, 10, even 15 years may not have been connected to. This is your opportunity to do the same thing. Tell people about your history. Tell people about your upbringing. Tell people about your interests. Tell people about things that really make you excited, that make you tick, that make you get up in the morning. Why do you have the job you have? What is your why in life? Are you someone who likes to do things for yourself or do it as a group? Do you find ways to connect with people, to collaborate with people? All the things that are interesting, even things that you don't like. You don't have to be positive to be sharing. You can tell people you don't like certain things. I don't eat tomatoes or cucumbers. Just me. I don't like the smell of cucumbers, and I don't like the consistency, the feel of tomatoes. It's weird, and it's been that way since I was a kid. Didn't like coffee when I was a kid. My grandfather was a big coffee drinker. There was always coffee around. Growing up around him, never was interested in drinking it. As an adult, I love coffee. And one of probably my greatest regrets in life is not being able to have spent a Saturday morning drinking coffee with my grandfather, because by time I discovered what the true value of coffee was, he was gone. So there you go. That's another little tidbit of it's negative. I didn't like coffee. Now I do like coffee. I definitely miss my grandfather. That's something I just shared with you as an example of something you can share with other people here in the world. So if you have a podcast, if you have a social media feed, if you have a Facebook page, talk about things that people don't know that maybe are a little bit interesting, a little bit different, a little bit from your history, etc., and then invite them to share with you. So share with me, share with this audience, respond to this podcast in any way you want, and then challenge everyone else in your social feed and your personal life to do the same. If you think there's someone in your life who doesn't understand you, that you could have a better relationship with, if they knew certain things about you, communicate with them, call them, text them, DM them, go to their house, invite them to lunch, invite them to dinner, do whatever you need to do in order to make those connections better, because connection and relatability and other people is what really makes the world go around. That's where the value comes in life, is building relationships with other people. We're more successful when we collaborate, and we're better human beings, happier, thus can create a happier society if we can connect with other people, if we can relate to other people, if we can find commonality, if we can do better communicating and finding things we can all do together, then we can shut out all that noise of the people who want to separate, who want to troll us, who want to create negativity, who want to divide us for whatever reason, whether it's corruption, whether it's power, whether it's just simply boredom on their part. We can combat that by sharing more information about each other. This is your chance. This is the challenge I'm sending to you. So again, reply to me on social media, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook. Hit the Facebook fan page for the Saturday Morning Hustle. Leave some information. It can be huge. It can be small. It could be from your history. It could be from today. Whatever you feel like sharing that will help people understand you. Then go out in the world and talk to people and share more with them and ask other people more questions. Talk to people in your family. Talk to your coworkers. Talk to people that you know from business. Talk to people you know casually. Heck, go and talk to someone, stranger on the street. It doesn't matter. Go connect with people. Be more open with them. Communicate with them. This is the challenge I'm laying on you on the Saturday Morning Hustle today. And then keep that attitude of openness, of communication, of connection, of collaboration as you move forward in 2023. If we all do that, it will be a better world. That's for sure. So tell us all something a little bit more, a little bit deeper, a little bit something extra about you. We'll all do the same, and together we'll be collaborating on this idea. Thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast today. Stream, subscribe, leave a comment, leave a review, share with a friend. Tell us something interesting about you. Ask people in your social media feed to tell us something interesting about them. Let's start a big social conversation. Make sure you follow and engage on social media, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and the Saturday Morning Hustle Facebook fan page. Don't miss any of the episodes each and every Saturday, plus the last episode of the Balance series that I put up the last Monday in December 28th, I believe it was, still available. Episode 24 of 24. How can you balance everything? That was the end of that special series. Make sure you get your Saturday Morning Hustle Entrepreneur EF and Coffee and Donut swag. All the info, all the past episodes, all of that at SaturdayMorningHustle.com. See you next week.